put your hands together for the late morning program with your host, Namras.
Hey,
Caitanyananda.
what's up, man? Haribol.
Episode 14, the late morning program with Namras. We have Caitanyananda on, my good friend, my older brother. We always get mistaken for brothers, don't we?
That's a good mistake.
Yes, it is. How's everything?
Good.
Good. This is going to be a good podcast. We're going to talk about a few interesting topics. Let's start off with what's going around right now. People think Tulsi Gabbard's going to become president one day. I'm open to the fact. I'm open to the idea, but it's not going to happen.
No, but it's a good start for her. I mean, Obama tried running for president, I think, one of the years before he actually became the candidate,
right?
And just put him out there. So I think it's a good shot.
I guess so. Devotees are like, if we all come together, we can all vote for her and she'll win. No, devotees make up like 0.00001% of the whole like United States. Please.
Yeah, and plus she doesn't openly say she's a Hare Krishna.
Right, and if if they do more digging on her, like they might just like find that she was a part of a this movement or some like commune her parents were a part of. Anyways, I don't want to go into it, but
yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, I just think sometimes devotees have their heads in the clouds a bit. Anyway, I'm just pessimistic maybe. But anyways, let's talk about you.
Okay.
So you grew up in New York.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. My parents immigrated to India. From India to New York in the 70s.
Right.
And
Prabhupada disciples.
Yeah, that's a pretty.
Anyway, get into that. Yeah, sorry.
Pretty interesting, story. Like my dad, he heard about the devotees as many people did, and he mainly heard about the good food they were serving at the temple. He, like many of the people who came from those days, they were bachelors and living in dormitories at Columbia University, believe it or not. And they were cooking for themselves. And how much, bhakri can you eat before you get...
Columbia?
Yeah.
Really?
They were dorms at Columbia that they were housed in, yeah.
Oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah. So when someone told him, the Hare Krishna temple, they serve, puris and this and that. So my dad's ears perked up and was like, let's go. And then finally, after I think a year or so of trying to convince his friends to go with him, they finally went. And then he got, of course, prasadam. He also bought a copy of Teaching of Lord Chaitanya, and his life changed ever since. Yeah, and then when my parents got married, then my mom immigrated. And in those days, they handed you green cards when you got off the airplane.
Not like now.
The good old days. So they regularly were going to the temple, and then they finally got to meet Srila Prabhupada in 1976 at the Rath Yatra.
In New York?
In New York, yeah. There was a life members meeting that Srila Prabhupada had in his quarters on the 11th or 12th floor, and my dad was there. Yeah, there's a recording of it somewhere. I managed to hear it once. I heard my dad talk to Srila Prabhupada for like a second.
No way.
Yeah.
That's super.
And then he took initiation from Srila Prabhupada on Govardhan Puja Day, 1977, literally 4 days before Srila Prabhupada left the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's amazing.
And then, my mom was scared. Oh, you're going to take initiation. That means you're going to move into the temple. Then the initiation ceremony's done. Prasadam is had. And my dad's like, okay, let's go home. She was like, what?
It's different those times, right?
It was a huge, the perception was so different. If you were a Hare Krishna member, it meant the perception was you had to be part of a commune.
Right.
But the reality was, Srila Prabhupada had a much broader vision from all the devotees who I've talked to and what I've read. For a Krishna conscious lifestyle and a Krishna conscious experience, which transcended even the temples. Nowadays you hear so many devotees saying, the Grihastas are supposed to be the majority of ISKCON, and second and third generation are supposed to be doing, a lot more. But so that means there's an expectation that the communal lifestyle that the first generation, made so successful, there had to be some transition.
And then you did you go to Gurukul?
No. We were going to go to Gurukul. That was the other thing. If you had children, in those days, whether you were living outside or not, the perception was if you want to make your kids Krishna conscious, they have to be in the Gurukul.
Right.
So my dad was like, yeah, no thanks. I mean, we came to America for whatever reason it was, material speaking, and the education, I don't trust education inside the Gurukul. So let them go to public school, which were good in those days compared
Public
to
school,
now.
yeah.
But my parents resolved that we will fill in the blanks. So we were getting up at 5:30, 6 in the morning as grade schoolers, singing some Saradava in our pajamas, waiting to go to the bathroom, and
Wow.
and we were chanting our rounds as best as we could. At Kadashis we were doing 16 rounds sometimes, and other days we were doing less. Television.
Did you go to Lake Huntington for summers or something?
Yeah. So in those days, after the Manhattan Temple, was sold in 1980.
55th Street.
Yeah, the 53rd Temple was
Skyscraper.
sold in 81 or 82. As part of the proceeds, ISKCON got a property up in Lake Huntington near Monticello. And so Lord Jagannath, that are currently in Baltimore, were staying up there.
Oh.
And a Gurukul was established up there. I still have some friends who went to that Gurukul.
Right.
And Vishnu Godaprabhu, he and his wife back then, they started the Camp Krishna.
Right.
Which was from 82 to maybe 87. And
I went to one of those.
No, you went to the version 2, which was in Gitanagari.
Oh, right.
You were too small for...
Yeah, I was like 2 years old in 87.
Yeah, probably. But many of your, peers, the people that you grew up with at Tawako, were there.
Yes.
And many of my peers and many of my friends, we were there. So we would spend 2 weeks. I think each camp was 2 weeks. One year, my father was like, "You can go for a whole month." So I was there for 4 weeks.
Really? Oh my God, that must have been fun, actually.
Yeah, but it was challenging because temple bathrooms are not exactly the most pristine.
Different, yeah.
And doing your own laundry and you're 8 years old, it's not exactly ideal, but
yeah,
you learn.
And then you went to high school and then college.
Yeah, did all of that stuff.
Studied architecture.
Yeah, became an architect.
You're an architect. That's pretty cool.
Registered in 2 states, New York and New Jersey.
If you need an architect, here's your map. If you're building a new temple. Anyway, we'll get into that. We'll get into that after.
Yeah.
When you said that's something that you'd like to talk about, architecture in ISKCON, that's a fascinating topic. Because anyway, we'll get into that after. Because I have a few things to say about it.
Of course.
But so you at this time when you were growing up, you were going to the Brooklyn Temple.
Yeah, we were going to the Brooklyn Temple, and in those days it was a very happening place. There was about 50-60 devotees. Ayendra Prabhu was staying there at that time.
Oh.
And he was doing his world famous
the truck. Yeah.
That was all decorated, fitted out, like a temple with the mirrors and all that, and
with all the New Vrindavan style stuff.
Yeah, all those moldings and things.
Yes.
It was a wild time. I mean, Rakeshwar Pandit Prabhu was there, and the kirtans were legendary.
Right.
We had our own Fab Four, of like kirtan heroes, and and Sankirtan was booming. There were bhaktas coming left and right, and there was a pretty sizable, congregation of life members and of Indian origin, members of the community who were coming to Brooklyn. And in those days, Brooklyn wasn't the best place. Yeah. They were coming every Sunday, religiously, faithfully. Sunday feast, we had like 300-400 devotees. I mean, it was quite a happening time back then.
Right. So, there's a lot of talking about Brooklyn. There's a lot of stuff going on there, But we're not going to get so much into it because I want to respect your, basically, not talk about kind of.
Yeah, let's not worry about all that. Let's just focus on
exactly
the positives.
Yes, the positives. But your role there now is of you have a role there now as you grew up there.
Yeah.
And now you're directing something there.
Yeah. So the let's see, how do I put this? So there was a need.
Sorry, Tulsi's doing the chants. Thanks for that, Tuls.
Smells good. So there was a need that had to be fulfilled, and I was asked to help fulfill a need, and I'm doing my best to participate. But it's not, a vacuum. It's an open process.
Yeah.
There's lots of devotees involved, and we're trying to get more devotees involved at the congregation level, grassroots level, as well as at the higher end, to help bring more focus back to ISKCON in New York. I mean, New York is Srila Prabhupada's home. It's ISKCON's birthplace. So
Yeah.
So there definitely needs to be some energy. I mean, I respect whatever's happening in Mayapur with the TOVP and all across Europe and stuff. But if the home temples are not cared for, or given some attention, then that to me is a bit of a challenge.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. All things considering, it's going well. It's not easy to, I guess, I don't want to use the word takeover because it's not a takeover. It's not easy to assume a new identity or a new vision for a community, and it's not easy to implement. It's very hard because it's not about simply just putting some orders down and pushing some buttons. It's about winning hearts. It's about transforming,
Developing relationships.
changing the perception, and that's a timely process, and it's something that no one should expect is going to change overnight.
Right.
I mean, Rome was not built in a day. There's a lot that goes to it, and even then, who knows? I might not be there, as a manager long enough, to see it through.
Right. I mean, how do you do that? You have a family. You have 2 daughters.
I mean, my family are really supportive.
Yeah.
And
Shout out to Rasa.
She's extremely supportive of what's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of my motivation is to ensure that for my kids and your child and for all of my peers' children's and the future generations to have a temple that's accessible and at the same time safe and at the same time relevant. It's no longer just about doing one thing over and over again. It's about how we can make the message, how we can make the mission that much more accessible and that much more relevant.
Right.
As the days go by.
What was it like growing up in the 80s in ISKCON as an Indian person?
It was a fun time. Because my parents were lucky to be connected to a lot of senior devotees, and whether it was in Gitanagari or in Vrindavan or in New York, and the zonal acharya system was quite prominent then. That was the only system then, actually. And my parents knew many of the senior devotees who were connected to the senior gurus of the gurus of that time. So we were able to get a little bit of a insider glimpse as to the workings of the society, and we were able to be part of many of the major happenings of ISKCON in those days, like the New Vrindavan boom in the 80s. We were right there. We saw all of it.
Really?
Yeah. When Srila Prabhupada was put in the palace, installed in the palace, and the festivals that happened for those following years, and then we were part of all of that.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And we got to stay in the temple when we were little kids with our parents, and at 10 morning program, my parents would cook the Raj Bhog for Radha Govinda, so the brahmacharis or the residents would have to take us around and keep us occupied for a few hours.
Oh wow, interesting.
So there were wrestling matches on the balcony between the brahmacharis, and there was a spinning contest for chapatis.
Spinning?
Yeah, the cooks would make chapatis, and then they would spin them to the devotees because they were fresh, hot.
Like frisbees.
Frisbees, yeah.
Oh my god.
And then I've seen definitely a few gulab jamun contests, in my day. So.
I was a part of that at the mantra retreat.
That wasn't a contest. That was just goofing off.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a contest because it started raining.
Yeah.
Speaking of the mantra retreat, hey, I want to know what you thought of Burke Rockford's. Let me just say something. Let's give a little bit of a background. So Burke Rockford, for people who don't know, he's a scholar from a university in Vermont, I believe. He is a scholar on ISKCON and Hare Krishna movement.
Yep.
He knows tons about Hare Krishna movement. He wrote books about.
He's also a devotee.
Yeah, he's a devotee. Yeah, he's a devotee. And so he came to the Mantra Retreat, which is a retreat for men in New Vrindavan that happened this past summer. Myself and Caitanyananda went. It was very nice. So he gave a speech about ISKCON and stuff, and he was basically saying how ISKCON has changed now, and I mean, you can talk about it more. But basically, what I got from his speech, there was no inclusion or any mention of us, our demographic.
Yeah, I mean,
The demographic being born in America but Indian.
I spoke to him about that afterwards.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Oh, tell us about that.
I did. So we were having prasadam one of the evenings, and me and Mohan Krishna were sitting next to him, and I just was like, you know what? It's in my mind. Let me just speak to him and let's see what he says. And he was actually.
What did you say? What did you say to him?
I basically told him. I said, I liked your analysis, how ISKCON evolved, and what you thought ISKCON needs to do to bring back some of its light. And I told him, I said, well, actually, there's the demographic of the Indian Americans, who became full-time devotees, or who became congregation members, or are fully initiated and running temples now. And then our generation, we grew up in America. We don't have the Hindu Indian mindset, that our parents came with. We have a different mindset, and now that is becoming a big part of ISKCON today, with the kirtans and the festivals and all that. And he said he didn't know much about that.
Wow, interesting.
So
that's a huge chunk of ISKCON at the moment, like right now.
Yeah, and
I guess he stopped studying it really because he's like retired.
He's semi-retired, and I think he satisfied whatever curiosity he had with ISKCON,
Right.
But he did say that this is definitely a subject for future research and future books. So hopefully that little perked his interest.
That's really cool.
To take it to that next level.
Yeah.
But Rochford begins by explaining the ISKCON demographic, which was really good. He said ISKCON was a communal society in those days, where everyone ate out of the same food and lived in the same place, and all the members were insulated as much as possible from the society, and they were living and sharing responsibilities and comforting each other, fulfilling all the needs of the society in a communal way.
Right.
But then that whole thing was able to exist because they were sustaining it through book distribution. Hardcore, going out and morning to night distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, and then eating very simply. And of course, health and age had a big part of it. They were all young, in their 20s, teens, 20s. Mm-hmm. Their bodies were able to handle that kind of stress. Mm-hmm. But then, after Srila Prabhupada's departure, the economy collapses of ISKCON. For some reason, many of the brahmacharis and brahmacharinis now feel, let's move on to the next stage of our lives, so let's move on. ISKCON's economy collapses. What did he say, 25% of what it was?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's a very startling figure. The number of books just dropped dramatically. And how did the temple managers cope with that? Okay, you're getting married to so-and-so. Okay, you have to move out. Okay, you're not so useful anymore. And now you have a whole generation of devotees who are living completely at the mercy of the temple, supported 100% by the temple, now being forced to figure themselves out.
Yeah.
Temples, the temple economies collapse, and then what are we supposed to do? And then here come all these bright-eyed, Indian Americans immigrated from
not Indian Americans.
Okay, soon to be Indian Americans, Indian immigrants.
Immigrants, yeah.
They come and they see there's a familiar, sound, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Mm-hmm. Visuals are familiar, gorgeously dressed rather than Krishna deities. Mm-hmm. The prasadam, puris dipped in ghee, fried in ghee. Nobody can
top that.
So
they came to support.
Yeah, so they came because it fulfilled their immediate needs, because they wanted to stay connected to their culture. And in some temples, like in England, that Indian American community was that Indian immigrant community was valued as a resource, and by means by which the temple could not only thrive but continue their outreach efforts. And in some areas, it was more viewed as a tolerated burden. That's what and I'm sorry if I disappoint any of the viewers by saying that, but that's kind of what it was. Like, okay,
it's seen as a burden.
Yeah, it's a tolerated burden.
Right, like all these Indian people.
Yeah, like, okay, we need to get the roof fixed. Okay, let's do a fundraising dinner, or we need to organize, a Rath Yatra or whatever. Let's get the board out and get everyone's names on there. But then afterwards, where's the spiritual cultivation?
No cultivation.
You know, where was the opportunity to say, okay, these are persons who are qualified to hear Krishna and talk about Krishna and be a part of, you know, the Krishna movement?
It seemed like they just wanted the money from those people, but they didn't really care about their spiritual well-being.
Because the devotees who were still living in the temple, they had this perception that, okay, because we're living in the temple full time, therefore we're the most immune from Maya. And those of you who are living outside, because you have to work every day, you have to interact with the material energy, you know, every day, therefore you might be more susceptible to Maya's attractions. So it's better you support our activities and let us do the missionary work full time. And in the Gita, you know, Krishna in the 12th chapter, he says if you can't fully if you can't fully follow the principles, then support those who are.
Yeah, the different gradations, right, of surrender. You could say.
The devotees who were in the temple, they had this little bit of a persona that, okay, we're still, you know, immune from Maya because we're living here, we're eating the prasadam, we're taking care of the deities, we're doing the missionary work, and you're here to support us.
Fast forwarding to present day, I hear terms like phrases like the Hinduization of ISKCON. Yeah,
so that to me is a misnomer. There's, you know, the Hinduization, if something is supposed to be Hindufied, that's a very broad and very vague term, you know, and I'm not talking about Hindu versus Vedic, you know, I'm not even going to go there. But in terms of Hinduization, like, you can be a meat eater and an atheist and still be a Hindu.
Right.
So what does that mean? So you're talking, so I guess the answer would be, there's a perception that the audience is turning brown, the food is getting spicier and oilier, the clothes are getting more shinier, more, you know, the music is getting more, you know, Qawwali-esque. It's not even raga, it's more Qawwali style, which is right. That would be called the Islamization of ISKCON, you know, if you want to go that far. There's more, you know, striking visuals. You know, there's not more of an austere situation. It's more visually friendly.
Yeah.
Then the festival's experiences, you know, are not exactly what they were used to or what the devotees were used to back then. You know, the whole holy thing. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that bother you when people say that?
It doesn't bother me because
it bothers me.
It doesn't bother me only because Hindu is such a broad word.
Okay, maybe not Hindu, maybe, but the Indianization.
It doesn't, because Krishna consciousness, you know, I'm sorry to say, came from India. Prabhupada came from India.
You know, something funny. I know, it's true. Something funny, like I was, you know, when that lady, that girl in that university wrote that cultural appropriation article. Yeah. So I was on Facebook at the time, and or it might be on Tulsi's.
That's so lame.
We'll talk about it after. So I was reading some comments that devotees made, and devotee was like, "See, this is the reason that we should take in everything Indian outside of the Hare Krishna movement. Like, don't advertise anything being Indian." And I was just like, that makes no sense.
No, it does not.
Like, how does that make sense? Like, you want to just, like, erase everything Indian out of ISKCON or Hare Krishna movement? Like, Prabhupada is Indian. The only thing they like of Indian is Prabhupada, and besides that, nothing else. Like, come on. Like,
it's like telling Christians, take Jerusalem out of Christianity.
Right. It's like, I don't know. It bothers me because it's like, it's racism, to be honest. Like, to be blunt, it's racism. Okay, Jai Jagannath Prabhu said, this podcast's new motto, and I agreed with him, is real talk from real people about real subjects. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. The talk has to be there. The format has to be such that there's room for dialogue. So this is a good format.
Yeah.
Real talking has to be there. Real people who are living that should be there. Totally agree with it. So
okay, so as a temple manager, your management, your up, above you says you need to bring more Western people into your temple. Don't need to preach to the Indians.
Okay.
What are you gonna say?
I'll say we'll do both.
Both?
Yeah. That's a pretty
So
novel
diplomatic.
idea. I mean, we have multiple halls in the temple. I can have a outreach for Western in one hall. I can do a Srimad Bhagavad
Oh,
Katha
you do
in
it
the
separate?
second hall.
You do it separate?
I can have a 6-hour kirtan in the third hall. I can have Govindas in the fourth hall. I'm preaching 4 different ways in one building.
Okay, well, what about those of us who don't have that kind of facility?
So we have ways and means to get facility without
Yeah.
having to spend money. You can rent halls.
So you think the solution is to separate everything?
No, the solution is leadership has to be mature enough to see diversity. You know, what is one of Prabhupada's famous mottos? Unity and diversity.
Right.
So ISKCON's diverse. Its preaching can be diverse. I mean, in a place like New York, it makes no sense to preach only in English. Because Spanish, Russian, Bengali, Creole, Haitian, African languages,
Right.
Chinese, it makes no sense. Bengali, I mean, there's a huge Bangladeshi immigrant,
Oh yeah, tons.
So why not preach to them in their language?
Yeah.
Or why not bring about some of their cultural uniqueness to programs that are geared to bring them towards Krishna? Why not? But at the same time, the balance should be there so that there's preaching going in different directions. Like one devotee was telling us, well, now that we're in Brooklyn, we should preach to Brooklynites. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had an interfaith gathering at Brooklyn Borough Hall, and the borough president was there, and he's actually almost vegan and wants to come have prasadam at the temple one day soon.
Wow.
And I met lots of pastors and imams, and they were like, wow, it's good to have Hindu presence in Brooklyn. I'm like, yeah, it's great.
That's really good. I forgot what I was gonna say. So it.
We need to have Tulsi with like flashcards.
It's such a broad subject. The Hinduization of
Yeah.
ISKCON thing.
To try to categorize it or try to poke criticism at it. It's not exactly ideal, but it's more of an opportunity for those of us who are in positions of leadership or those of us who care about what's going on to actually try to understand it.
Right. Oh, what I was gonna say was that it's the easy thing. Let's just be honest. It's the easy thing to preach to Indian people.
Yeah, I mean, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he actually gave a lecture in Houston in 2002. One of our friends shared that lecture with me, and in that lecture, he was actually critical of his own disciples who were taking the easy way out and preaching to only Indian people. Mm-hmm. And I think other ISKCON leaders who have come to temples in our area have said the same thing.
Yeah.
So
I don't see any project that is run all by Indian people and they're preaching to Western people and the Western people are joining. Do you?
ISKCON. It was run by an Indian man.
No. Okay, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like a temple. I haven't visited all the temples in North America, so sort of people who are like pointing at me and saying, "Hey, we're doing that," let me know. But,
let me know too.
But Silicon Valley maybe, but I just see more Indian people joining.
But the thing is,
not that that's bad.
Right.
Like, let's get it straight.
Yeah.
I'm not racist in any form or anything like that. But what did you say?
To your own race.
To my own race, right? I can. But so basically, my concern is that this kind of like rhetoric that's been going around, like this kind of racism, that like underpinning racism of people saying, oh, Indian people are not really, basically saying that Indian people are not like qualified to, or they're not important enough to be devotees. And for a place to be successful, there has to be lots of Western devotees.
Well, success, I think, is met. If we want to go to real success, we have to go back to what Srila Prabhupada wanted. In Africa, in Nairobi, particularly, because he went there a couple of times, the devotees who set up ISKCON out there, they were doing Harinam in the streets of Nairobi, and they had some success, but they were getting more success from a lot of the Indian community who was living in Africa at the time. Mm-hmm. And so Sunday feasts were mostly brown people, And Srila Prabhupada came in and he asks, and forgive me, where are the blacks? And then the devotees were like, well, we don't know how to preach to them. And Prabhupada told him, preach like this, open the doors wide open, have ecstatic kirtan, have prasadam, they'll come to you.
Wow.
And they did. So
I think the mark of like whether you're doing the right kind of preaching or not is who are the local demographic. If they're not coming to the temple, then your preaching is going wrong. So if the local demographic is...
I don't agree with that. I don't agree that your preaching is going wrong.
right, it's not going wrong. It's not optimal.
Right, because I mean, why have a temple in that area if the local people are not coming to that temple?
So what temple's doing that? Show me a temple that's doing that.
What, having people that are local coming to
That's
the
an
temple?
optimal preaching center.
There is none. Outside of India.
Right.
You know, and that's not
That's a big statement.
and that's not a bad situation. Again, I'm not here to say it's a bad thing, but I'm saying is that's where, you know, the devotees and the leaders need to look at. I mean, that's what the leaders who are coming to New York have told us, is now that, you know, we're in a different situation now we should see how to connect with the people that are local to the temple.
Right.
You know, and for us, local means all of New York City. It doesn't just mean, you know, the square mile around, you know, the temple.
Right.
So that's where we are scratching our heads, is how, and then luckily for us, you know, there are other projects, you know, like Bhakti Center and the Harinam Ashram. They're making steps and spreading it out, and now one of our challenges would be is how to work and create that network by which everyone can benefit from this type of, you know, presence.
Right.
You know, but the thing is, you know, that's the challenge for every manager of every temple to look at. What is our demographic? So that requires, you know, what I talked about earlier is analysis, research. It requires devotees to step back a little bit and begin to see, well, what are we doing right and what can we do to make it better? And a lot of what we can do to make it better comes from actually understanding what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Understanding his, you know, because he was very clear on where temples need to be established. He was very clear on how to attract demographics. I mean, the peace formula that Srila Prabhupada discussed in Chicago, that wasn't just, you know, pie in the sky. That he proved it practically in his own example. You know,
But when that guy came, the jail guy.
No, it was the lieutenant in the police department.
Right. He wanted to know how to.
Yeah, and he said, give us your empty halls. We'll have kirtan and prasadam, and people will come and they'll have a better experience. You know, and temples that do cater to that open their doors, that invite the local people to come, they benefit.
Yeah, I see that when I was living in England, Bhaktivedanta Manor would have their open days.
Yeah.
And like all local people would come.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's a good idea.
Yeah. And it doesn't require us to have a big marble palace. It doesn't require us to have, you know, vast, you know, grounds and landscaping and whatever. It just requires devotees that are willing to come out of their comfort zone and say, how can I share Krishna with you?
I think that's really key, coming out of your comfort zone, trying to do things differently, because like when you see a temple that's done things the same way for the past 25 years, for them to change and say, okay, now go, you know, do an open day, or go talk to the local government, or go do this and go do that. It's like, it's kind of like a little bit difficult because it's like a kind of unknown ground, you know?
Right. And some of that is because of, who's calling? Some of that's because of, actually most of that is because of lack of association.
Lack of association?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
If you're not challenging yourself, if you're not associating with people who can make you get to be a better person, if you think you know it all, I don't have to, you know, communicate with my peers, I don't have to go back to the head office and see how to make myself a better person or be a better leader, then you can fall into the pitfalls of complacency.
Yeah. Our GBC emailed the management of our temple and said, we didn't make our goal for book distribution, you know, the goals that we had for 2018. Mm-hmm. Like all ISKCON North America was going to either meet their previous year's goal or was going to increase, and we didn't meet this goal. And I was just thinking, like,
all of North America or just
no, our temple.
Okay.
And I was just looking at the devotees who were on that list of who he sent it to, and I was just like, most of these devotees don't have backgrounds in book book distribution.
Right.
Like, how can you expect them to, you know, I guess you can expect them to get people together and to organize a book weekend warriors or something like that, but like people who haven't really done it or been around people who have done it maybe don't think it's so important, so how can you expect them to like...
Yeah, so that requires, you know, managers from top to bottom to be willing to train and be trained.
That's so key. That's so key.
You know, so the level of accountability doesn't simply mean if you do something bad, you know, be ready to get punished, but how to make yourself better. That's also part of accountability.
Yeah, yeah. Like, sometimes I think that, you know, now devotees that are managing temples, the amount of devotees that have lived in temples who are managing temples now is so much less. Like,
yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, but then you get like really like kind of big mistakes that devotees managers might make, and it's like people who have lived in temples like, what? That's like a no-brainer.
But again, it comes from complacency due to lack of association.
So like my idea is like someone who's never been a temple president or has never lived in a temple, like shadow a temple president. That should be like a you know, that should be like something for someone who wants to be a temple president. That should be a total like...
Well, it's not a question. It's not like, you know, someone wakes up one day and says, okay, I want to be president. That's not...
I know it's not like that, but...
You know, but the thing is, you know, anyone who is, you know, in a position of leadership should be always thinking about who, when someone replaces me, what will be the situation that they're left with.
Right.
And if it's something that's complex, then we have to identify those persons who we can start training. And that means you have to be able to be, you know, interacting with your congregation. You have to know what they're all about. You have to see what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Provide the necessary courses or means by which they can, you know, be trained. And if they're enthusiastic to do something, then how do we, you know, facilitate that?
Yeah, or generations from now, it's going to be something different.
Right. You know,
that's scary.
It shouldn't be a situation where someone says, you know, I waited my whole life for this opportunity. Now I'm going to do whatever I want. And then afterwards, when I'm, you know, dead and gone, then someone else could. It doesn't work like that. That's not sustainable.
Right.
That's when you get the ups and downs. You know, and we need to see some consistency. And consistency means there always has to be accountability, good accountability, not so good, and accountability improvement.
Yeah. It's a tough thing, you know, ISKCON management, and
it becomes tough if you make it tough. I mean, this is Srila Prabhupada again. You know, it's simple if you keep it simple. And keeping it simple doesn't mean you just do the 6 artis a day and then walk away. Keep it simple means the level of complexity in management doesn't have to be as complex as you think it needs to be. As long as there's dialogue, as long as there is, you know, constant training and constant accountability, there's always going to be ways to keep the system going in spite of whatever challenges come your way.
Right. Do you see yourself being a manager like long term?
No. I mean, I'm not a good manager. I can't manage my own time. How am I supposed to manage a whole community? But I hope that devotees, you know, who have that aptitude and have that skill can see, well, if someone like me who's unskilled, you know, accepted the reality of the situation, that they come forward and say, you know what, we can do it better, or we can help you, or I can see a situation that, you know, someone is just much more better than the position than I am, then Prabhu, you take this position.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true. That's a big point. That, you know, I was talking to Jahnavi about ISKCON succession in our last podcast,
right?
And that's something that worries me about the future. You know, like how will it go on if you know, people second generation don't kind of come and take the reins and say, you know, we want to be a part of this now.
Yeah. I mean,
like it shouldn't happen by, it shouldn't just happen like by, oh he can do something, let him do it. Like there should be a real
real push.
A real push from the first generation to be like,
Sure.
including the second generation, like,
Sure.
hey, why don't you take a little bit more leadership, or why don't you shadow
Yeah.
me, or like, you know, like that. I think that
Absolutely.
really needs to happen, because
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we're losing many of our second generation peers who could have been so great in terms of taking ISKCON to that next level.
we're
And-
losing them.
Yeah, we're losing them in the sense they're still part of the society, but now they're, doing their own projects, doing their own, things. And if some of that energy could have been, put back into helping to manage the society and helping to keep challenging our abilities to outreach and our abilities to connect people to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Parampara, and all that, we could have achieved a lot more.
Yeah.
And at the same time, those persons who now have to be, or if those persons that, were also in leadership, then also in terms of their spiritual lives, in terms of their association, their desire to study the Shastras and get more, with the whole gravity of the culture of ISKCON, that wouldn't be something we would take for granted either.
Right.
And then this whole question about Hinduization goes away.
Yeah. Right.
It all goes away.
What's that?
Don't forget about architecture.
Oh, architecture. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Flashcards. Oh, that was a strong chant.
There's
So
my sinuses.
right. So I was driving by a daycare down the road here.
Yeah.
It's a brand new daycare. Beautiful building.
Yeah, sure.
And it was like a lot of that stone facade, and like that real nice siding, and like a stone columns, and like a kind of like a craftsman style building.
Okay.
And I was like, why can't we have a temple like this? And it had a clock on the top.
Oh yeah, I drove by that coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, why can't we have temples like this? Like, it's like a very welcoming looking thing. It looks like a library.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, we should have a temple like this. Like a very library-looking temple, and someone, and have, welcome or something, and like come in or something, open to come in, like kind of like a church. Not like churches. Not all churches look welcoming, but I would just walk into a church because I've been into a lot of churches, and I know that you're allowed to just go there and sit there in the pews and just pray or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like ISKCON needs to get more into like a very friendly looking and kind of not unassuming looking building to welcome people to come, instead of a very Vedic style with the gopurams and like a very cultural or ethnic looking building where people might be like, oh yeah, I'm not going there because that's only for a certain type of people. Like, what do you think about that
Yeah. I mean, in India,
as an architect?
Prabhupada wanted, the domes and all that because that's the kind of person he was attracting. In the West, Prabhupada, was openly saying, give us your abandoned churches. We'll put, Krishna deities in there and we'll have programs.
Right.
In LA and in Dallas, Prabhupada set up the model of how he wanted temples to be established in the West. Dallas is the only temple that kept it. LA changed it. But the model was Prabhupada wanted the prayer sanctuary where the pews are to remain. And
Keep
he
the
wanted
pews.
he wanted devotees he wanted the guests to come in with their shoes, sit in the pews, and he wanted the devotees to sit on the stage or whatever in the front and do kirtan and give talks.
Whoa.
That's what he wanted. And he wanted the deities, the sanctuary, in, a safe, sacred place behind
Really?
the temple. Behind
That's really
the
interesting.
sanctuary. So like if there was a chapel or a gymnasium behind the main worship space, that's where he would want the temple. So in Dallas, the main building you see in all the pictures, that's not where the deities are. That's where the Prasadam Hall community hall is.
Right.
That used to have pews. And where the deities are, that was the gymnasium that was attached to the temple.
Yeah. Right.
And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he set up Kalachandji's, he put it right in between. So when you go to Kalachandji's for a restaurant, you have to walk by the temple to get to Kalachandji's.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. And and that to me was how Prabhupada wanted to get the Western people to appreciate the philosophy first, then experience the culture.
Right.
So like at Bhakti Center, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, was able to engage me a little bit in helping to create his vision for that place. The temple was moved to the third floor for a reason. So that the second floor, where the temple used to be, would be that place for seminars, yoga classes, the introductory, the philosophical stuff. And then when people were inspired to know more who is Krishna, you go up one more floor and there's Krishna and Radha Muralidhar standing there to greet you.
Wow, that's really nice. I went to, when we were living in, not in this house, but we were living in an apartment, when my in-laws came to visit, we went to this place, it's called Jacksonville Chapel, right next to the temple, basically. And they had two services. They had a traditional service, and they had the modern service. So we went for the modern one. So we went in there, and there was like tons of people in there. They're really nice. And they told us, okay, go here. That's going to start soon. So we went into the pews, and we just sat down there, and it was dark. And then the lights came on, and it's got rock concert. Literally a rock concert.
Great.
It was so awesome. They were singing about Jesus, and we were reading like the things, and we were singing along. It was like a sing-along thing. And then after the rock concert was finished, a guy came out like with a headset, and he just started like speaking. He was like such a good speaker, and he spoke for maybe like 15 or 20 minutes, and he just had like some main point, but he was like preaching basically about God or whatever. And then afterward, they said, okay, it's over. And then we all walked out, and they were like serving coffee and cookies or something. And then everyone went back to their cars and left. And I was like, that's brilliant.
No expectations.
That's brilliant. It was such a great, and I felt like uplifted. I felt really uplifted. And I feel like I couldn't say that the same about every Sunday feast I go to. To be realistic, of course I feel uplifted to see the deities and whatnot.
Sure, because they become so monotonous.
Right.
Every Sunday you block your time from 5 to 9 or 4 to 7, whatever it is. You go to the temple, you fill your role for that evening. Either you're doing an artik or you're in Sunday school or whatever. You eat prasadam, spicy or not, and then you come back. And then you put your clothes away, put your all that away. Then Monday morning back to work. So it was like a segment of your life, and so that church and what I hope we can challenge with the situation that we're in now is how can we make the experience such that it becomes a part of your life.
How are you going to do that?
It takes a lot to think about.
Just follow their model. Do a rock concert.
No.
It's attractive.
See, that's the thing. We're not here to have gimmicks. Some people say, "Oh yeah, you do this type of dance or this type of color show but those are just gimmicks. If there is no spiritual, if there is no adhyatmic grounding, part of it that justifies these things from taking place. I mean, there's ways you can do it just by greeting somebody at the Sunday feast nicely.
A new person.
Not only any person. Forget about new. Anybody. Everyone who comes to the temple should feel that they're welcomed, warm, and safe. Anybody.
Yeah, you can't really say that about every temple.
And then devotees, when they come to the temple, they shouldn't have to worry about, how am I going to get to the the restroom? I'm in a wheelchair, or should I be watching my kids the whole time? And I don't want
Tulsi has something to say about that.
So does Rasa. So we should have the two of them do a
child protection.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
And then if I go to the bathroom, what am I going to see? Is it? What am I going to see? So the thing is, and it's not just the devotees living in the temple's fault; it's everyone's fault.
Yeah.
It's a blame game. Well, I live outside; they live in the temple. They should do that. Well, I live in the temple. I only do so much. How much more can I do?
Oh my God, I hear that all the time.
So the question is, do the devotees living outside have a vested interest in what's going on inside the temple, aside from putting on your Brahmin threads going on the altar? To do the artik, showing off in front of the whole Sunday feast crowd. Do you have the vested interest in seeing the temple thrive?
Yeah.
Do you have a vested interest in seeing that other people thrive when they come to the temple? And if you don't, you have to think about it.
That's such a big thing.
You know? I mean, what in the 90s, there was one brahmachari living in the temple, German devotee. Amazing person. Karaja Prabhu, I'll say his name, because he was a great person. Every Sunday, he would clean the entire temple lobby. And he would set up, the nice tablecloth on the reception desk, put some Mahaprasad flowers, a picture of Radha Govinda, some temple cards or whatever. And then he would take some incense and light it up and put it in different places in the temple lobbies and the shoe room and all that.
Oh, that's nice.
And everybody who would come in, Hare Krishna, in his deep German accent, welcome, and then he would tell them where to go.
Yeah.
Simple.
Simple.
At Bhaktivedanta Manor, what do? They have the volunteers standing there with the tilak stamps to put it on your forehead and spray some Mahaprasad water or scented water or whatever.
I found that difficult because then you can't. It's like everyone's a devotee, and it's like you don't know who you can be mean to, and it's a joke. It's a joke.
Well,
it's a bad joke.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hold on a second. Are you look like a devotee because you're wearing tilak, but you're. What? I've never seen you before. I can't yell at you.
I mean, the thing is, in the 70s, I heard there were teams of devotees whose only job was to sit at reception and identify who was a seeker. And then your job was to approach that person, talk to them about Krishna.
Right.
And some of our closest family friends, they became devotees because someone was kind enough to talk to them about Krishna one day.
Right.
And then the prasadam would be laid out, Vedic style, all the plates made in rows. Everyone would sit down, and the devotees would sit next to the guests, and they would all have conversation. There was no question about, Sunday feast, I got to get my pakoras first before everybody else does. The mentality was, how much more can I give? And the reason they were able to do that because they felt nurtured, they felt satisfied, they felt cared for. So, congregation members, if you're living outside, but you're coming to the temple, you're also looking for some sort of, nurturing or caring.
Yeah.
Nourishment.
Yeah.
Not just, paneer sabji, like real, genuine nourishment. So it's a challenge for the managers to be able to create that nourishing, nurturing atmosphere. And physically, we can do a lot. Handicap accessible toilets, an elevator if you have multiple floors, proper lighting in all the rooms, so that there's no dark spots, doors that lead to, exit or corridors should be, closed or locked if they're not to be accessible so that everyone's safe. Cleanliness is a big thing, programming and content, we were discussing, how come there's no, a mother's room in the temple, for mothers to nurse their children. It's a law now in at least in New York State, probably a federal law, that all businesses with X number of employees need to have mothers' rooms.
Really?
Yeah, it's a law.
In the church they had it as well.
Yeah. So, and then rooms for parents and toddlers. I'm not going to say moms, parents and toddlers or little children to be able to express themselves without having to disturb or challenge anyone else's ability to listen to the class.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't find it disturbing because I have kids of my own.
Yeah.
It just requires everyone else to be just a little bit more mature and just focus.
Yeah.
But so you put, and then prasadam served at a normal hour. God forbid we don't serve prasadam at 9 o'clock at night. We serve it at 7 o'clock or earlier.
Yeah.
So Bhaktivedanta Manor, they serve prasadam all day.
Yeah.
That to me is brilliant. You
Yeah.
take prasadam whenever you want and stay for the class, kirtan, come as you go. As long as you get nurtured spiritually, you're going to come back.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the devotees who are part of the receiving team or the management team or the inmates of the temple to now then approach those persons and tell them about Krishna.
Right. But to go back to my original point, you said that in Dallas and LA, that was what Prabhupada wanted.
That's what he wanted.
But what about temples that don't have any pews, or they were like not old churches, or we're building them?
Well, that's
brand new.
That's the thing is I'm not here to criticize how temples are being built or on what purpose they're being built or in what way they're being built, but I'm here to just extend my my knowledge or my research or my experience that Prabhupada was very clear on how he wanted the experience of Krishna consciousness to be depending on what part of the world you're in. He was very clear about that. And it's documented, it might be in specific letters or conversations, so it may not be in the Bhagavatam, but some instances are there too, like about Rath Yatras in the CC, how he wanted Rath Yatra to be all over the world. So he had a very clear, a very concise vision about how temples should be interacting with the community. In Rome, Prabhupada was there one and only time in the summer of 74, and the devotees complained to him because there were condoms on the street. And they were like, we should get out of here. And Prabhupada said, no, we have to stay here to purify this neighborhood.
Wow. So what do you think about like Vedic style temples in America?
I think it has to be taken in context.
What do you mean?
Thing is, if you're promoting a Vedic experience, but there has to be some way to approach it. It shouldn't be just bam in your face. There's a big temple with a big chakra on top. A really good model in terms of temple building are the Swaminarayans. And forget about the marble part. That's the last thing they build. The first thing they build are community centers.
Big open halls.
Not only open halls, but there's classrooms, gymnasiums, mothers' facilities, restrooms, libraries, places where the community can be nurtured.
Yeah.
And they buy into their philosophy, and they accept the philosophy. And even when they establish deities, they establish them in the community centers. And when the community centers get to the point of full capacity, then they discuss, should we, open up a marble temple. And the marble temple that they open or build can barely hold 1/4 or 1/5 of what they can hold in the community halls.
Tiny, yeah.
So what's the purpose? The purpose is you go there, like you go to a church for specific prayers.
Right.
But you do your community activity, the communal stuff, in the community halls.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
So, if we're saying let's open up a 30,000 square foot temple hall, fine. Then you should have enough of a community to sustain a 50,000 square foot community hall.
Yeah.
There should be means. The size of the building should allow for growth, but also be able to facilitate community. Like you can't have this type of conversation typically in a temple room. When you're in front of the deities, you should be engaged in prayer.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, talking critically about social issues.
Yeah, right. I see that happen a lot. Yeah.
It's because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else place for people to congregate. And some temples, are physically they have no other place to go, so they have to see how to best, utilize what they have. I mean, like Taco Temple, they don't have a lot of spaces, but are they using what they have for the right purpose?
Right.
You need to have 12 offices when you can do the function with 2 offices. With technology nowadays, cloud is, such a brilliant thing. You can work remotely and get the account sorted. You can scan all your receipts in. You don't have to have big files of, random papers.
Right.
But then that space you save from your file room could be now a mother's room, or could be a classroom. Yeah. And you don't have to scrounge for space in the Prasadam hall or in the temple hall or whatever to be able to execute your activities.
Right. So you said that, the actual now Indian people like us who are second generation Americans. Indian Americans, yeah. Indian Americans. I would say they're second generation, yeah. So we see that they look Indian, but they are American. And they're not so attracted to Krishna consciousness, I would say. the way the piety and the way the cultural like.
No, the culture they're attracted to because they want to pass that on to their kids.
Do you think so?
Because they grew up touching that culture.
That's true. They do. Yeah.
You know, Navratri time you break out the colorful clothes, and Diwali you go get the sweets. Holi, you know, get the color powder.
Although Diwali's become quite secular.
It's fine.
In my town here, they had a Diwali thing at the library, and it was like the little kids made construction paper diyas, and there was no talk of Ram or God or anything.
Well, no, they talk about, you know, from darkness to light.
Right, exactly. So that like ambiguous kind of.
But the thing is, you know, with our generation, Indian Americans, whatever, they grew up, you know, more cerebral.
I hear breathing.
Sorry.
The little guy. He breathes really loudly.
You have to train him to be your flashcard holder.
You were saying.
So, in our generation, we grew up with the full Western education, right? So we learned differently. We don't trust things that our parents tell us so much because, you know, we've learned about research and problem solving, you know, hypotheses and logic. You know, that's a big thing. So faith has to be earned. It's no longer passed. So how do you earn someone's faith? You have to be able to present the philosophy in a way that attracts that intellect, that problem-solving mentality. So coming to a big temple and you see, you know, big, you know, things of fire, you know, and smoke everywhere. That's not exactly gonna challenge someone's, you know, mind, but more like push them away. Like, oh, I don't want to be a part of this. This is too much for me.
Yeah.
Why should I give up 3 hours on a Sunday? I could be watching football. You know what? But if we present the philosophy in a way and then make it relevant and accessible, so, you know, Sunday Feast doesn't have to be a segment from 3 to 6 or 4 to 7 every Sunday. It could be an all-day open house. You know, like I tell devotees that I'd like to see in America in a situation like, you know, where at the Bhaktivedanta Manor where they have Sunday feast, literally it's from 12 noon till 9 or 10 at night. And there's people, devotees, pilgrims coming in all day.
Yeah.
You know, and they come and they have different experiences depending on what time of the day you come. You know, Goshala tour, or you have a drama in the theater, or, you know, there's some seminar about this, or you can go tour the farm, you know.
Yeah.
So in that kind of an environment, and with programming that befits that environment, you know, you have classes on astrology, or you have classes on, you know, the Vedic you know, Ishopanishad. That's a great, you know, book for cerebral thinking, Ishopanishad. That plus, you know, kirtan, prasadam, and, you know, the regular atmosphere that's safe, that's, you know, family friendly.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry.
Then you begin to attract, you know, our generation of people.
I think it also has to do with people developing relationships with devotees who are like real devotees, like real practicing devotees, because the bhakti influences.
Yeah,
bhakti gives rise to more bhakti.
Right. So what is the challenge? I mean, so what is the impetus for me living outside to practice devotional service?
Yeah.
And you know, rise above and, you know, get past my anarthas and make it a serious thing. What is the impetus?
What is the impetus?
If I don't have good association, if I don't have someone that I can, you know, live up to or look up to or follow.
Yeah.
And those persons also are looking for that association.
Yeah. A certain submission has to be there.
Submission comes from association.
Yeah.
If you really want to be with somebody, you know, like you really wanted to be with Tulsi.
Well,
some submission has to be there, right?
Yeah.
That's debatable.
He's a joker. Gaurachandra. Yeah.
But it all comes from positive, good association. And the thing is, you know, we don't have to just rely on devotees living in the temple to get that association. Like, your father is a great person to associate with. So is my dad.
Yeah.
Your mom, you know. And believe it or not, they don't live in the temple.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm gonna get my dad on the podcast.
should.
Pretty soon. He's a very fascinating person.
But the thing is, your father had that kind of association when he was growing up as a devotee.
Yeah.
That convinced him that this is it.
Yeah. Definitely.
And he's the kind of person that can mentor and give association to lots, and which he does. My dad does that.
Right.
Many of our parents do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we also have that same responsibility.
Yeah.
So, the temples, they're there to facilitate relationships, facilitate association. What did Govinda Maharaj said? He said temples are like crying schools.
Crying schools, yeah.
Right? But to have a school, you have to have a lot of people. You have to have teachers. You have to have an environment that teaches whatever that's to be taught.
Yeah.
It's not like a factory. You go in, you get punched different ways, then you get sent out. Where's the humanism in that?
Where do you see ISKCON in North America in 10 years?
I see it a lot more diverse, and I see a lot more relevant.
Really?
Yeah.
Relevant in what way?
Relevant in how it attracts or how it reaches out to its constituents.
What do you think a big part of that, how to do that is?
Honestly, dialogues like this.
Really? Really?
I do. And I'm not just saying, just because you're a great guy. I'm just saying this type of, what is the verse of Nectar of Instruction?
Dadati pratiganati.
Right. Guyam prichati akyati. So these confidential talks, of course, the ideal confidential talk is about spiritual doubts, but a lot of spiritual doubts come from the fact that our needs may not be being met by the philosophy.
Our needs may not.
Because we don't understand, or we're not sure how to get those needs fulfilled. Like, Jai Jagannath Prabhu's podcast about, homosexuality. There was, a lot of shastric things that helped Jai Jagannath Prabhu to navigate that.
Right.
And to me, it's like, it was eye-opening, because it's not a question of now, should I believe or should I not believe? It's a question of, do I really want to believe? Because the tools are there.
Mm-hmm.
The people are there. Just the thing is, this dialogue now brings those topics up, reveals those persons out. Up as potential mentors, as areas of concern, as ways the leadership and the devotees can start moving their focus around. So this type of dialogue is critical. The first ISKCON council was in 87 when the Guru crisis happened. It was in New Vrindavan, and all the leaders of ISKCON gathered together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ravindrasura Prabhu was there, and many other leaders, and that's when all the limit of gurus was opened for the first time, and many qualified, disciples of Srila Prabhupada accepted the responsibility of giving initiation.
Right.
It was after that. So maybe we're due for another one of those big powwows where the leaders of ISKCON, first, second, third generation come together and start talking about these things. It might be as simple as, you having a lot of FaceTime with, up and down the ladder, but it might be more productive, if there was, assemblies, retreats, mantra retreats, Mataji retreats, there's ways, but the thing is, that communication, that dialogue has to continue.
What's the biggest challenge we are going to be facing in the next 10 years to grow?
I think the challenge is letting go of grudges.
Oh, it's a huge one. Huge one.
Because many devotees have been hurt.
Yeah.
Many devotees have been affected negatively by how ISKCON evolved or devolved. And no matter how many times we say sorry, it's not going to change what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not.
Do you mind, sir?
And I'm not saying we should just take it on the chin. This is your karma. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying is we're gonna have to at least let go some of those grudges so that we could move together. I encourage anyone who's hearing the podcast, if you don't have a temple to go to, come to the Brooklyn Temple. Come take some prasad with us. Come have some kirtan. There's no one going to stop you from doing that.
Right.
You know?
That's really interesting. I feel like a challenge definitely is egos, and fighting within our society.
Yeah, but those egos, a lot of it came up from bad experiences.
Yeah.
You know, I was hurt by so and so, therefore now I'm going to behave like this.
Right.
Kartahan vidi manyate. Something happened. Kame sthiti vrta jnana. Something happened that made you lose your intelligence. Prapadyanta anya devata. Now you're reaching out to other means to sustain your existence. Tam tam niyamamastaya. You're getting some success from that, so now you're feeling strong about yourself. Prakrita niyata swarat. Now I've made my new identity. But is that identity consistent with Srila Prabhupada's identity or ISKCON identity? That you have to be judged on.
I feel like a lot of our peers, not a lot, but in my experience, people get turned off by ISKCON just because they may have like you said, a bad experience with the movement or with the management, and then so what keeps you going as a second generation, and now you're getting so involved with management and stuff? Like, you don't have to do that. You have a family to take care of. You have a house, I mean, you're going to, and so, like, what drives you to continue doing what you're doing, which is kind of in ways selfless?
A few reasons. One is, my parents, they really, tried their hardest to...
Sorry.
It's okay. They tried their hardest to connect us to Krishna. And it was not an easy task.
Right.
And when I, understand from them, and then I hear from other devotees, and then I read about Srila Prabhupada, the energy that he had spent to come here with this message, which is a universal message, that to me, is something that can't be locked in a room somewhere. It has to be spread. It has to be, especially when it convinced people like my parents to really give their lives for the society, because the message of Bhagavad Gita is universal. Mahaprabhu's message is universal. And so what keeps me going is I don't want to let them down.
Your parents. Right.
And at the same time, what am I going to leave my kids?
Yeah.
I don't want them to, grow up in a society where religion is optional. And in a sense, not that I'm forcing you to go to church, but I definitely don't want you to miss out on the experience of
experience that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're directly connecting to Krishna.
Right.
And then, lastly, Srila Prabhupada said, I consider New York my home. I feel at home here. So this is Prabhupada's home.
Wow.
Vrindavan, Mayapur, Bombay, okay, that's okay.
My office,
That's there. But of all the places outside of that, he said many times, I consider New York my home. I feel at home here. So this is Prabhupada's home. Someone has to stand.
Didn't he say something like, when he had nothing and he, was trying to develop the movement in New York, New York gave him shelter.
Yeah.
And gave him he said that about America.
Yeah.
America gave me so many men and women.
Yeah.
Gave me so many things, and he was crying, saying that how indebted he was to America.
Yeah.
America.
But that's the thing. I mean, if more devotees today cared about ISKCON, they would study its history. They would study its ups and downs. They would take a vested interest in trying to keep Prabhupada's mission and his mood and his vision. This is not an ordinary. I mean, I request all of your leaders all your listeners to listen to Srila Prabhupada's poems that he wrote.
Right.
Jaladuta. I mean, that's basically his mission in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You know, and his fears. It's pretty clear. He was afraid. You know, but what convinced him to carry on? You know, and that can help us in our motivation to carry on. And the thing is, you know, especially when you take initiation, you know, this is what one senior devotee told me when I got first initiated. You know, he said, basically now the Guru Parampara is sitting on your shoulders. So when, you know, Prabhupada said I was never alone, he was right. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was there. Gaur Kishore was there. Bhaktivinoda was there. And they were acting in a way that Prabhupada could feel him, because he was fully committed to pushing the mission, the message of Mahaprabhu, which is what his guru told him to do. A lot happens when you actually, you know, follow something that's right, and you follow a person who's right. A lot of good happens. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partha Tatra Shri Vijay or Bhutir. They're there waiting. It's just a question of us now acknowledging Krishna, you know, I will do what you say. Karishe vachanam tava.
How is it being a father?
It's great. The best thing ever.
Really?
Best thing ever.
How do you now that your girls are getting, how old are they now?
3.
3. Oh man.
That's a fun time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's fun about it?
They're so curious. They're so...
Talking a lot.
Well, that's okay. It's great. But they're so curious. They question everything. You know, and... You know, we're in a Montessori household, so it's not a question of just pointing it out or simulating. We actually have helped them experience that. You know, cutting vegetables and touching ice, and, you know, putting chocolate chips on their pancakes as it's being cooked, you know. Of course, everything is safe, you know, but the thing is, when they experience that, that helps them in their play. It helps them be more expressive in their play. And then, you know, we try our best to immerse them in worshiping the deities. So
is that a big part of, you think, a part of you know, raising children in Krishna conscious?
Yeah.
Deity worship?
Yeah, Parikshit Maharaj, Bhagavatam.
Oh, that's right.
And then Prabhupada in the purpose talks about his own childhood.
Oh, right.
So absolutely.
Was that a part of your childhood as well?
A huge part of my childhood.
Deity worship.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do the girls do at age 3 regarding deity worship?
They offer incense, offer flower.
Nice.
They can offer ghee lamp. You know.
They like
ring
to
the
do
bell.
it.
Sure.
That's really nice.
They can sing. I think the first line of Brahma Samhita they know.
Oh, right. I can't wait till
String of
Gaurachandra
prayers.
talks.
Yeah, but you have to immerse them. They have to hear.
Yeah.
So instead of, you know, singing lullabies, I was singing Brahma Samhita to them, you know.
Oh, really?
Vaishnava bhajans, you know.
Yeah. How long you been married?
This year will be 9 years.
Wow. Great.
2010, yeah.
How's that been?
It's good. Very good. You know, for my spiritual and material well-being, it's been very good.
Yeah.
You know, it's someone who I love, someone who I care for, and someone who I, you know, want to facilitate every of our dreams spiritually and materially. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm learning a lot too about myself as a man, and a lot more to go.
I think a challenge devotees our age feel who are trying to get married is that how do they know if that person is your... How do you make that step of committing or knowing that this person, I could spend my whole life with this person? Like, how did you know that?
I didn't.
You didn't know that?
I didn't.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when I was...
I guess neither did I.
When I was... You knew.
No, I didn't know that I was going to spend my whole life
You
like
knew.
You really?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not about me. It's about you.
It was clear. It was clear. The two of you, both of you knew.
It's not about us. Anyway, yes.
But, you know, when I was introduced to her, you know, my wife, it was... Again, it's just like many of our friends, you're introduced to somebody, I don't know, maybe, you know, but more I talked, you know, to Rasa, and more I, you know, heard her feelings and what her desires were and what she was looking for, you know, it made, you know, it resonated with me, and that's what I was looking for also. Did it mean that it was perfect from the day one? No. Every marriage has its challenges, ups and downs.
Definitely.
But they're all ways for us to learn. But the thing is, it's a lifetime commitment. So
Yes.
So it shouldn't be.
That's daunting.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when they put the sindoor, it's supposed to be set for 7 years, 7 lifetimes, right?
All right.
So we had to do it twice because the sindoor color was wrong. So the pujari Rupanuga said, "Oh, that's 49 lifetimes."
Wait, what do you mean the color was wrong?
It
was
wasn't
like orange or something?
Yeah, it wasn't red enough.
Oh, interesting.
So
Wow.
yeah, the first one we had was a little more orange, and from both sides at the peanut gallery, they were like, "No, it's not red enough. Do it again.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
So I look forward to 49 lifetimes.
Do you so do you do any architectural stuff for ISKCON?
Yeah, I've done a few things. The Bhakti Center, I helped the devotees there a lot with reconfiguring the building. In 2012, only the temple room was partially done. Just the cow dung was on the walls and some of the moldings.
Right.
But there was still stuff had to be done with the air conditioning in the pujari room. Small things, the pillars. So I helped, put that all together. And then the second floor, which was a temple room, needed a full reconfiguration. So I helped, Radha March achieve his vision for that. Mm-hmm. And then the roof deck, we got that put in, which was a pretty interesting, thing that we did.
Oh yeah, that's great.
But it helps,
Totally.
And then we reconfigured the ashram on the 6th floor so we can have more devotees stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then CNJ, I helped them getting the pujari department and some of the other rooms organized for their temple. And they keep asking me to help them with future projects, but I'm like, I have the Brooklyn Temple project is a big part of my life.
Any plans for Brooklyn to change architecturally?
Right now, only thing we're thinking about is how to make the building safe and clean and operational.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many talks about, tearing down the whole thing, tearing down part of it.
Really?
Skyscrapers, so many pie in the sky ideas, yeah. But, I'm trying.
Why is it pie in the sky? I think that's a great idea.
Not if you have, hardly anyone living in the temple. There's barely any programs. Here's a great story about architecture. Radha Ramanji, Vrindavan.
Yeah.
So all of us know how the temple is. It's like you go through this nice ornate gate, then you have to go up and down and this way, that way to the temple room.
Yes.
And it's a small temple room, maybe as big as your full flat of your house, and the deity is there. And, beautiful experience. Yeah. So there were these two brothers in Lucknow, the Shah brothers, Kundan Shah and something. So they were wealthy business.
Is this a recent thing? Or?
No, this is 200-300 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So they were rather Ramana Bhaktas, and they also had connection with the British. They were doing business. So at one point, in this height of their success, they were thinking amongst themselves, why is Radha Ramanji staying in this, tiny little hovel? You have to go up and down and all around and so forth and so on. Can we do something better for him? So they arranged for some land right near the temple, and they built what we call the Shaji Palace, with the curly Q columns and the mosaics on the wall and the French manicured gardens and the chandeliers and all that. They financed the whole thing and they got it built. And they told the Radharaman Pujaris, okay, now we would like to have Radharamanji stay in this beautiful place. And the Radharaman Pujaris were ecstatic because it's a nice, big palatial place for Radharamanji. So the Vastu Puja is done, everything is done. The last thing left to do now is to take Radharamanji from the old place and carry him to the new place.
Mm-hmm.
Radharamanji does not move.
That little deity. Deity couldn't move.
He would not move. He would not move.
Like they couldn't pick him up.
Couldn't pick him up.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
True story. And the pujaris were like, we don't know. And the Shah brothers were getting, anxious. Like, did we offend? What's going on? So then, in the night, Radharamanji came to the pujari's dream and said, ask the two Shah brothers where all of you will stay. Next morning, the Shah brothers come anxious. What's going on? What should we do? And the pujari said, well, Radha Ramanji asked me, where are you all going to stay?
Meaning, no, where are we
going to
stay? Yeah.
And the Shah brothers were like, oh, we didn't even think about that.
Oh my God.
I think you guys were just going to stay here and just walk over to, it's just down the road. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
And the pujaris were like, okay. Then that night, Radha Ramanji said, well, why should I live somewhere where my devotees aren't staying? I'm happy here. I didn't need that palace. I want to be with all of you.
Wow.
So they told that to the Shah brothers, who repented, but now they have this big giant temple. What do you do? So they installed small Radha Krishna, they call them Chota Radha Raman.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never been there.
Yeah. And then they have this one room, it's full of mirrors and chandeliers, all European, like 200-year-old chandeliers.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the thing. If you care for the devotees, Krishna will happily stay there with you.
Care for the devotees. That's the motto.
Yeah. So why should we talk about, building big skyscrapers when the devotees who are coming now aren't properly cared for?
Amen to that, man.
Right?
Amen to that. Yeah.
So, all this talk about temple building and getting new facility, what's the purpose of it? Is it the purpose to facilitate devotional service, facilitate relationships, dadati pratigranati? Is it there for that purpose? Or is it there to fulfill some personal ambition or some, legacy or whatever it is? What's the purpose?
Good question.
Then someone might say, well, there's no parking and whatever. Those are, to me, excuses. That means there are challenges which...
Someone here?
Yeah. There are challenges which have not been addressed. And instead of addressing those challenges, you're just finding reasons to do something that you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's even in life. Forget about building a temple in life. If you're finding too many excuses, then there are challenges which you're avoiding.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was really informative. I definitely feel like our listeners got a better picture of you and what you're about and stuff. It was really awesome.
Forgive me for anything I said or misspoke.
No. I don't think... this is an open conversation, and I don't think there's any forgiveness needed. But if people want to get in contact with you, you're on Facebook?
Yeah. Facebook is there. Otherwise, you can just...
Email
me through the temple. info@iskonnyc.com.
info@iskonnyc.com. Get in touch with Caitanyananda. Let's leave it at that. We'll have you on again. Let's talk about other controversial things. Maybe we can get more into Brooklyn at some point, if your wife allows.
It's not a question of whether she allows. It's a question of whether it's appropriate.
I'm kidding. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
There's nothing really to talk about. Anyway, it's great that you're doing that. You stepped in second generation. I'm all about that. I'm all about the second generation.
I hope other second geners. I mean, it's not just me. There's a whole team of second geners that are helping at Brooklyn. So
great,
yeah.
Wonderful.
And
we need to engage everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So episode 14 with Caitanyananda. Thank you everyone for listening.
Haribol.
Haribol. Thanks.
Man, I need to.